This is unreal, honestly. I've never owned an elevator until now. I'm standing in an elevator that is a part of the project on the east side that we're working on. And this is surreal to be standing in something that I use fairly often when I go to different places. You know, we have a son that has a stroller that we're not able to walk up the stairs or use an escalator. And so we're using an elevator pretty much anywhere we go that has multiple levels. And so in the past, I just get on an elevator, not really pay too much attention to the operational aspects of it other than pushing a button and watching the door shut, that nature. But to get to a point where we're actually owning an elevator is something that I never imagined myself, as weirdly as it sounds. As much as I aimed to become a developer, never even imagined the of owning an elevator and the maintenance that comes with it. But even before that point, the process of getting the elevator certified and inspected in order for it to be active and usable. And ironically, as it sounds, this is one of the last things holding us back from getting our certificate of occupancy due to the challenges of getting this inspected and code. And we had one set of plans that we were working off of, but throughout the process of construction, there was a code change with regard to how elevators and their electrical box needs to be designed and separated out to a certain extent from other components of the overall elevator, overall finding us in a position where we built it via the old spec or per the old spec. When the inspector comes out, they say, hey, look, you need to build it via the new spec. And so now we're 20 days out from receiving the electrical box that is required per the new spec in order to have some of the electrical work redone in order to meet code. And so with us assuming that this project would have been completed by now, approval from the inspectors to have this elevator operational, we're pretty much 2 months behind schedule when it's all said and done, all due to the elevator and the overall process of getting it certified. And it's a learning experience, but it is what it is, and we're here. But I'm standing in my own elevator, but this is turning out to be one of the biggest headaches at the end of this project due to the different various challenges that some I shared with you, some I won't. But having an elevator sounds cool, but it also comes with a number of challenges to have to manage from a developer standpoint. So this week was a lot slower than our previous week. Our previous week we had our ribbon cutting, and that was tremendous. That was a tremendous event. Really excited to have gotten to that point. Such a milestone, and unfortunately I didn't capture a lot of content from that event because my mind was just all over the place. I had to write a speech, and I wasn't necessarily finished with that speech until I'd say 12 o'clock, and the ribbon cutting was at 1 o'clock. And so I had to get dressed and drive roughly a half an hour to the location that the ribbon cutting was at. And I basically just made it to the site at about 12:55, and the ceremony started at 1 p.m. So it didn't even cross my mind to set up my camera and capture the actual speech. But the city of Detroit does have it on their website, so I do recommend you checking that out. But what an event. We had funding partners, family, friends, community representation, and it was a genuine feeling of accomplishment and excitement. And this was something that really confirmed to me that we are on the right path with the Ribbon, which is the site that we have over on the east side of Detroit. And hopefully I'm able to share some content from that ribbon cutting via photos. We had a couple of photographers there, some amazing photographers that were snapping away. And once again, hopefully I'll be able to share some of that content. But after that week and after that milestone, I think it's okay to have a slower pace this week, right? And one of the things that we've been dealing with is our garbage can. For whatever reason, the company that we're with, amazing company, specifically the staff that I'm working with, no issues on that regard, but the operator of the truck that picks up the trash bin and empties it out and puts it back to where it needs to be, for whatever reason, they are setting it in at an angle that doesn't allow for me to close my gate. And this is an issue. This is an issue because, for one, we have neighbors that border that garbage can, and with that structure potentially being an eyesore, we need to have it be able to close and have the ability to hide the can at the very least, in order to make sure that those residents that border that structure don't look at it as too much of an eyesore. And on top of that, the gate, without it being able to close, is now halfway opened in the alley. And if somebody happens to drive across that alley pretty quickly and at night and don't see this gate, they can ram into this gate that we've spent a pretty penny for. And so I need this organization to come out and reposition this garbage can in order for me to be able to close my gate. But outside of that, nothing too major to touch base on. We have been talking with a few food service tenants, and we are hoping to be able to announce a new food service tenant before the year is out. We have a few lease agreements that are out being reviewed. We have LOIs from potential tenants as well. So we have a decent amount of interest in the space, and I would probably pinpoint it to us basically fleshing out a kitchen for the right tenant. So if you don't know, kitchens are pretty expensive. Commercial kitchens, more specifically, are really expensive to build out, 200 grand plus. But one of the things that we did early on in the project, even before we closed on the construction loan, was build in a pretty penny when it comes to tenant improvement dollars in order to make sure we have the capacity to attract the right tenant for the space. And especially with the community asking for food service, we knew that we were going to have to do our job when it comes to concessions for the retail tenants for this space. And so baking in the amount of tenant improvement dollars, convincing my funding partners to allow for me to do so, was a continuous fight that I did not give up on in order for me to make sure I have the capacity to once again attract the proper tenant and give them the ability to not need to borrow as much in order to get to a point where they can serve their first customer. And so I think that is really attractive to the tenants that we've been talking to, and hopefully we have something to announce on that once again before the year is out. But with that said, I appreciate you chiming in, and we have a decent amount of content outside of these weekly episodes that I would love for you to check out, and I am going to start ramping up that content a little bit more. So stay on the lookout as we share not just my story, but stories of other developers, other sites that are being redeveloped by potentially nonprofits and other organizations, and really wanting to do my best at sharing this narrative of the rebirth of the city of Detroit in a manner that you may not be familiar with, and or highlighting developers that have been here grinding it out for years, or the single family developer that is making more money than a lot of the commercial developers because they have a system in place that they're able to carbon copy and rinse and repeat. And next thing, they're sitting on 15, 20 houses, all Section 8, profiting 20,000 plus a month. This is happening in the city of Detroit, and I love to highlight those types of stories as much as I can. But with that said, I appreciate you chiming in, and I'll see you in the next episode.